Hello, my name is Isaac Marquez, and my project is on the Rwandan genocide. My main thesis is that it's inhumane that the world knows about the genocide but did nothing about it. A brief history of the genocide. After World War One, there's a scramble for Africa, so all these European countries got together and they divided up the country or the continent of Africa into little regions that each European country could control. So Belgium ended up getting control of the country, which will later be known as Rwanda. And the thing about when they're dividing up like these little countries is that they didn't care about any like borders that were already in Africa, so they like ended up pairing a lot of groups in the same countries, and then these groups oftentimes hated each other and had like long rivalries and long histories of violence. And so in Rwanda, there's these two groups, the Hutus and the Tutsis, and the Tutsis were the minority group, but they're rivals with the Hutus. So Belgium ended up giving control of this area to the Tutsis. So this further sparked and added fuel to the rivalry between the two. Uh, Fast forward a few decades, the Hutus would take control in a small rebellion, and then after they took control, Belgium would give them their independence. So once Hutus had control, about 3 decades go by, and then the civil war happened. Another civil war happened, and in this civil war, there's fighting between Hutus and Tutsis, but eventually it would come to like a ceasefire. And then a year later, uh, the Rwandan president that they put up would be assassinated. And the Tutsis were blamed, of course, for his assassination, since it was a Hutu president, and this sparked the beginning of the Rwandan genocide. As you can see here, here's Belgium, a tiny European country far west, and here's Africa in this tiny little box, and here's Rwanda. So Belgium somehow was in charge of this African nation miles across the world. And so here are the two groups, the Tutsis and the Hutu. There's small biological and characteristic differences between the two, but it was just a diagram to show, who these people are. Some facts about the genocide. There's estimated 800,000 to a million people who were killed. And this genocide spanned 3 months, 100 days around there. And in that same time period, around 250 women were raped. And oftentimes this would lead to the spread of HIV. The women oftentimes were impregnated, and this would later lead to deaths down the line. Uh, HIV related deaths and childbirth deaths, and yeah. One thing about this genocide was the use of the public radio. The Hutus had control of it, so they would blast like propaganda and hate speech against the Tutsis. It wasn't uncommon for someone to hear someone on the radio say, "Oh, go and kill your Tutsi neighbors." So this caused like mass violence, like on the streets. Neighbors killing neighbors and whatnot. And the crazy part about this whole like genocide was the reason it started was because the president was killed and it was blamed on the Tutsis, but it's thought to be caused by Hutu extremists who actually planned and staged the killing of the president in order to blame it on the Tutsis to start this genocide. And as you can see here, here's a man with a machete. So before the genocide even started, there's large orders of machetes that were sent to Rwanda, and so as if like they were planning on starting this, and the machetes were handed out to like Hutus on the streets, and with the instruction of kill Tutsis. So that's what led to like the average person in Rwanda to be armed and murder other Tutsis. And here's pictures of the aftermath, and here's some more trained militia groups that went out and did the killings. And as for international care and foreign aid, the The UN, they had a small amount of troops in Rwanda at the time, but they were removed shortly after the genocide. I'm sorry, they were removed shortly before the genocide began. And in the beginning when it was happening, there were no efforts to aid those in Rwanda. The UN kind of turned the other cheek and just saw it all happen. If it wasn't for the few thousand French troops who asked the UN to go, there would have been no foreign affair or no foreign intervention. But then again, the UN instructed the French troops to only do humanitarian care, so they weren't allowed to go out and search and rescue people. They weren't allowed to fight against attackers. They were only allowed to stay in their zones and just help anyone who came to them. Uh, but afterwards, after a few months go by, then the UN decided, okay, things are pretty bad, so let's go and send in people. But they were months too late. Uh, by the time they got there, everything was, the people had already been killed, and the killings had already died down because so much had already happened. And here's the issue I had with it, which goes back to my thesis about why they didn't uh, get involved. Here's this famous photo. It wasn't taken during the Rwandan genocide, but the irony still resonates with this issue. Obviously, it's like, oh, they're supposed to be involved in peace, but the UN, how it makes it look like it says uninvolved in peace. And that's basically what I'm getting at here. How the UN, they had the means to help. They had the manpower, they had the money to go in and cause more of a positive impact, but they didn't, and they just allowed like almost a million or around a million people to just get murdered, and it was on their watch because they knew it was happening, but they refused to do anything. And even then, when the French troops did get there, the UN instructed them not to help more than they could, which is just like baffling to me because they were already there, but they just weren't allowed to do anything, which is why there's a bigger issue here of not being able to help when you want to. And then it wasn't even until after everything had happened, the UN decided, okay, now genocide's over, so now let us take control. Let us, they were in charge of administering the charges of genocide. Oh, who's responsible and who wasn't, and they're in charge of, oh, let's rebuild the economy and let's help out here and there. But all the killing had already happened. You can't take that back, and that's why this issue is really prevalent to me. As for representation of this genocide, there's a few movies that really capture this issue well. Hotel Rwanda is a famous one. Uh, Main character, who he owns this hotel, and there's like white people at this hotel, Europeans, and so they're naturally a humanitarian area, and you could see the people like in the UN there, but not being able to help. There's a point in the movie where the main character sees like people he knows and family getting murdered, but he can't leave because he's in the humanitarian zone, and the people there in the UN, they can't help him out either because they're instructed to stay there no matter what. And the film Shooting Dogs and Shaking Hands with the Devil sort of you know show a similar situation. And Shake Hands with the Devil, it's about a person in the UN who's in Rwanda, and he's not allowed to go and help. But going against his superior officer's commands, he goes out and tries to help as many people as he can. And in the case for Shooting Dogs, it's about a group of people who, rather than going home and like fleeing to safety, they go against that and go and help people out during the genocide. And but all these films just goes to show the lack of the attention that the UN gave Rwanda, and they just left them out to dry, really. And that's why these stories happen. Individual groups of people have like these heroic moments where they go out and help, despite no one else being like behind them. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you for watching my presentation.